All right, music fans, welcome back. Harmless Dave here, talking real music in real time for a few real people out there, just like you and just like me. So, interesting comments by Schon. All right, there's this website that I found this article on. It's called rockcelebrities.net. And I don't know where they got this Schon quote, but I've never heard this before. And I think you'll be interested in hearing what Schon has to say about Steve Perry. Neal's kind of done with Steve. And it always was, hey, we're holding out hope that Steve might want to do something with the band again. The door is always open, according to Jonathan Cain. Well, maybe that door has been slammed shut. Before I talk about that, though, here is the band Landfall. If you like Journey, you might enjoy Landfall. They're kind of like Journey and Mr. Big and a few other, I would say, AOR-style bands rolled into one. They're kind of their own thing, even though they definitely have the 80s rock influences in there. Their lead singer, Guy Oliver, is really cool. And the ladies tend to like Guy. You'll see him there, the man in black toward the middle of the shot there. And I've had him on the show. And every so often I will send him a message and we'll talk about stuff. But he's from Brazil. He's been called the Brazilian version of Steve Perry, mostly by Jeff Scott Soto. I think he came up with that term. So Jeff should know. He was in Journey for a while, so he should know. And Jeff's a pretty good singer. So I give him permission to use terms like that. And when he's right, he's right. So anyway, let's get on to this Schon thing. So in this story, again, it is from rockcelebrities.net. Shon's rebuttal of Steve Perry's remarks. Back in 2008, Perry was talking about how he felt like he was the new kid on the block in the band. We've heard this story from VH1, the documentary they did a while ago, the Definitive Journey documentary. I believe there's even a longer version because that was one of the biggest VH1 documentaries ever. Behind the Music, that's what they were called. But Perry said a lot of things like, hey, don't crack the stone, which meant don't break up the band, in the sense that if you guys go on without me, that's like cracking the stone. I don't know if that's the same stone in the song Stone in Love. I think it might be different. But a lot of what Perry has said over the years regarding this situation is that Journey could go on, except don't call it Journey, which is, you know what? That's a big problem as far as branding goes, because Journey is still going strong, even though some people don't feel it's Journey the way it used to be, because it's not. Nobody can replace Steve Perry. Arnel Pineda has said that. Steve Augeri said that. Jeff Scott Soto has said that. There's no way to replace Steve Perry. All you do is continue and you cope with the fact that Perry isn't there. But Perry is no longer really able to compete with his former self, his younger self. And we heard that on the duet with Dolly Parton. I mean, he sounds okay, but this is a different Steve Perry. Now, if you wanted to rework some of these Journey songs for Steve's, voice today, I think you could do that. And it's been suggested before. But I think Schon has moved on. Responding to all of Steve's comments, probably dating back to the VH1 thing, Neal clarified that no legal issue has prevented him from talking about Perry. He expressed frustration over the frontman's perception that the band speaks negatively of him. Neal says this: I didn't say anything inflammatory about him. I didn't talk about how he still gets paid like an MFer even though he shouldn't be. Obviously, we've discussed that quite a bit. Perry made out like a bandit when they negotiated his exit. And he had really great legal representation. I think Neal Schon learned a lot from the way Steve negotiated that deal. Anyway, he goes on. Neal says, it's stuff like that I'm not allowed to talk about. How he still gets paid really well for doing nothing. Now, I'm adding in some things here. But the facts are the facts, you know? He sort of just moans and whines about everything. And he just assumes that every time we bring up his name, we're saying bad things, or he thinks we're hanging on to his coattails. Now, there are a lot of Journey fans that think Journey is still living off Steve Perry's coattails. But again, they put a really good show together, no question. Arnell, especially at the beginning, I think really revitalized Journey. I think people in some cases are maybe a little tired of it all. And the band probably could use a little boost, a little rejuvenation. But, you go to a Journey show, and I think you're going to be entertained. But guess what? Neal isn't done yet, all right? Neal goes on to explain why he feels it's important to share the band's history and his perspective. It's not like that. It's never been like that as far as him, hanging on to Steve's coattails. He barely ever talks to the public, which is very true. Some of the stuff here that Neal unloads is very true. He doesn't want us talking about him. And some of this might be behind the scenes with the lawyers going back and forth. He goes on to say he doesn't want to talk about us, which is true. But when people ask me for stories about the band's history and things that went down, he says, I'm going to talk about it. I mean, we're completely done. Now, this is the phrase that really caught my attention. We're completely done, meaning Steve and Neal are done. Remember when Neal was always saying, it'd be great to go out and have a coffee, have a cup of coffee, sit down and just talk about old times with Steve Perry. He put it out there a million times. Perry never took the bait. Perry said something like, well, he just wants to hang out with me because he wants to work with me again. And Neal came back and said, nah, I just want to hang out. And Perry didn't really address that part, but obviously Steve Perry never took him up on the offer. And, when Journey played San Francisco last year, or a venue somewhat close to where Steve Perry resides, I thought, wouldn't it be cool with the band's anniversary if Steve Perry came out and just said hello? He could do the whole Rock and Roll Hall of Fame thing and just wave and address the audience and let Arnell do the heavy lifting or the AI, whatever it is going on with bands today. Anyway, Neal isn't done yet. He says, I told you about the VH1 thing. Now, I don't know who he's talking to in this clip here or in this snippet on rockcelebrities.net. But he says, I told you about the VH1 thing, which is true about cracking the stone. Now, if you're not familiar with Journey folklore, Steve Perry basically told the band, don't go on without me. Don't crack the stone. And that's not the stone, I think, from the song Stone in Love. Perry making an illustration here about breaking this stone that they had all worked for. And if you crack it, maybe things aren't going to be the same. But anyway, Neal Schon says, I've been wanting to set that straight for a while. It's the truth. So F him. So Neal Schon it basically says to F Steve Perry here. Wow. So yeah, when Neal goes nuclear, he really goes nuclear here. But the bottom line is, I think he's had enough of the back and forth. He was trying to reach out to Steve Perry. Steve Perry is reclusive. He's had issues during his life, which I think has made him a bit of a recluse. He's not a fan when people start talking about him. There are unconfirmed rumors that he didn't like all the attention I was giving him. So if you notice, this channel has kind of stepped away from the nonstop Steve Perry content, and other people have picked it up. Channels with very similar names to mine, which is a little bizarre, but obviously they see a lane there where people just want to hear about Steve Perry. You know, somebody put out a video, Steve Perry has new music out, and it wasn't new music. It was like a remixed version of a Journey song. This is the kind of interest that people have in Steve Perry. As much as I'm into Steve Perry, I'm more into everything else these days, including headlines like "Died Suddenly, Cause Unknown." I wish the best for Steve Perry. I hope he puts out some new material, but apparently Neal Schon isn't friends or doesn't want to be friends with Steve Perry anymore. I think he's just over it. And quite honestly, I don't know if I can blame Neal Schon. Now, for those of you who don't like Neal, I get it. All right. It's easier to like Steve Perry probably than it is to like Neal Schon. But I think in this situation, there's blame to go around. There's certainly blame when people are constantly harping on someone and they want him to come out and stop being so private and to get back into the public eye. And Steve Perry obviously doesn't want to do that. If the last 20 or so years hasn't proven that to people, then I don't know what will. You're lucky you got the little snippet in the Dolly Parton duet this year. Maybe Steve will surprise everybody. Obviously, Christmas is here, and there's no new material from Steve, or Christmas is really close. Typically, you would release something at this time of year because maybe you can sell a few copies. But, you know, Steve is always talking about, hey, I've got new material. Working on music in the basement, and we haven't heard anything for quite some time. So I wouldn't hold your breath if you're a Perry fan. I think the hourglass is almost empty when it comes to new material. Perry has to do it soon if he's going to do it. I'm sure there's material that he's been working on, but I don't know if he's going to put it out there. As far as Journey, they continue. Next year, they've got a big tour, Toto, and then they've got Def Leppard, and they've got Cheap Trick and Heart and all kinds of support out there, John Waite. So it's going to be big next year, and the Journey machine rolls on. Neal Schon is younger than pretty much everybody else. He started so young that he's not over the hill quite yet, and he can still play guitar. So people will show up to see Neal Schon play guitar. Maybe not the guys from Rolling Stone magazine, but people like you and people like me are going to be interested in hearing Neal play guitar. And as classic rock kind of fades away, it's good to know that Journey is still out there, even if it's not the Journey with Steve Perry. We miss Steve, but Steve likes life the way it is. He enjoys his seclusion, and for the most part, he's a very private guy. And Neal Schon is out there in your face all the time. They're very different people. So anyway, that's the video on this topic. Neal Schon is telling Steve Perry where to go, essentially. You know, it's sad. It's really sad that those two guys didn't make up or make peace after all these years. Lots of lawsuits and lots of money still heading in Steve Perry's pocket, and Neal Schon is not a fan of that. So anyway, here's Landfall one more time. The album is Elevate. Check it out. It's really good. If you like Mr. Big and Journey and some other things, they are a band from Brazil. So there you go. One that's not from Sweden. We finally did it. We finally found something not from Sweden to promote. Thanks for watching, folks. Please share these videos, like the videos. Think about Patreon for $1 or $2 a month to support the channel. The algorithm has gotten very unfriendly again. You'll notice those view counts have cratered. And a lot of us we don't know what's going on with YouTube. We don't understand it. It's week to week and day to day, but right now I can still use your support. Don't forget about YouTube memberships. You get early watching privileges on many of these videos, not all of them, but many of them. And so I appreciate all the YouTube members. And thanks for watching, like I've been saying here. And please pray for peace in the Middle East and around the world. And I'll see you soon.